You're listening to the King of the Fourth podcast, offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics, with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to another edition. It's been a while, first of all. So hello, of King of the Fourth Quarter podcast. I'm Jim Quigley. As always, I'm with my brother, Michael. And we are less than a month away before the Celtics tip off the regular season. And
thank God.
And there is absolutely a ton that has happened, both in terms of minor Celtics signings and then a blockbuster trade between the Bucks and the Portland Trailblazers that directly impact, the Celtics' chances of completing the goal this season, which would be to win the NBA championship. So, Mike, you tell me where you want to start. Do you want to start with the signing of Jrue Holiday and Lamar Stevens and some two-way guy that I never heard of? Or do you want to dive right into the blockbuster of the trade?
We got to start with what really impacts the Celtics here. It's not the end of the bench. Milwaukee got a lot better, and the Eastern Conference has got a lot of good teams. It's going to be really interesting, but it's Boston and Milwaukee, right? And I felt like it was going to lean that way even before this trade, and now afterwards, Vegas has Milwaukee as the favorites, which I don't really agree with because, as we were talking about before the pod, they still don't have the wings really to cover Tatum and Brown. But what Milwaukee does have, I think they're going to be very efficient on offense with this trade. Obviously, that's quite a duo with Giannis and Dame Lillard going forward, and it's not over yet. There's more that's going to come with this trade. They're already talking about moving Jrue Holiday, and the Celtics are part of those conversations. So it's a really interesting time because I think the Celtics have the chips to make a move here if they want to. It sounds like they're in it. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what you would give up for a play like Holiday and how this trade with Damian Lillard impacts the Eastern Conference moving forward and the NBA moving forward. Do you think the Bucks are the favorites, or do you think it's still the Celtics? In my mind, Jim, I don't know if I'm a homer, but I just still think the Celtics are deeper and better. But if you look at who has the best players at the top, I think it could swing either way between Giannis and Tatum and between Brown and Lillard. I would lean that Lillard's a better player right now than Jaylen Brown, but I also could argue that I think Tatum is better than Giannis, but Giannis has done it. So yeah, this is exciting stuff. I can't wait to watch these two teams play, and I can't wait for April and May when the NBA playoffs start.
Yeah, so we are, this trade, it kind of reminds me of the Kyrie trade in terms of timing when the Celtics picked him up. We are like, next week training camp opens for the Celtics. They tip off their first preseason game next Sunday, believe it or not, against the Sixers. Yeah. And, they open the season on October 25th. So, and I think the Bucks maybe open the season the day before against the Sixers or the day after or the same day, whatever. But this is, you're knocking on the door of the regular season, and it's a great trade for the Bucks. There's no doubt about it. I think one of the issues they've had at the end of games is they haven't had guys that can finish games. Middleton gave you that a little bit a couple of years ago. Holiday played out of his mind at times in the playoffs when they went to the finals and helped with that. But they really haven't had a guy that you look at in the fourth quarter as a killer. And Dame Lillard is certainly that. They also, it kind of changes the way you defend them, right? For the Celtics for the past 4 or 5 years, you kind of build a wall against Giannis. You didn't so much worry about even a Holiday beating you, as good as he is and what he's capable of, but you kind of live with that. You can't do that as much. If you play off Lillard to any extent, he's going to kill you. Once he gets hot, there's very few guys, maybe Steph Curry in the league, and that's it, that just become unconscious like he does. He's a scary addition. Now, that doesn't mean that the trade doesn't come without risk. He's in his 30s.
The risk of injury, and injury, and he's a risk on defense.
Yeah, so absolutely, he's a smaller guard that is in his 30s, 33 years old, right? So he's headed into his mid 30s. His contract is enormous, and he's signed through the next 3-4 years. Plus $50 million. If he, starts to decline, and there was no sign of that last year. So let's be clear. He was one of the best 5 players in the league last year, hands down offensively, without a doubt. But, taking on a point guard at this age with that type of salary is a huge risk. Typically, in NBA history, this is when you start to see the decline. And typically, that decline can be pretty rapid. So whether it's because of injuries or just wear and tear because you're a smaller guy, so I think for the Bucks, this season here, this isn't.
This is the one they want to win now. This is the one,
and they were in the tough spot now that the roster has really been cut down quite a bit. With the guys they saw going out with Holiday and Grayson Allen and things like that, they got to fill holes on that roster right now. They don't have much in terms of wing depth or starters at all. Behind you have Chris Middleton, who they re-upped in the offseason because I think they had to, but I don't think he's worth the $30 million, whatever he signed for there. He really showed some rapid decline, and then they don't really have anything at all after that. Jay Crowder looked like a shell of himself.
Is he still there?
Went on the floor, yeah, he's still there. Went on the floor last year. Pat Connaughton is a nice role player, but he offers no resistance on the defensive end against bigger wings, which has really been the Bucks' kryptonite over the last few seasons. Two things have been their kryptonite. One, they didn't have a finisher, I thought, and that's been resolved. That's been resolved. Yeah. And the other thing is, if you look at Tatum and Brown, they haven't had anyone to deal with those guys, and they still don't. In fact, they got worse in that regard.
Yeah.
And
that's why I don't think the Bucks are done. I think that they're going to be trying to move that Bobby Portis contract to bring in some wings.
Yeah,
that's their next
risk with that, though, and he's probably the only contract, and maybe they try to move Connaughton, but you're gonna wings are high valued, even mediocre ones. So you got to give up a lot to get anything in terms of wings, and I guess Bobby Portis is all they have left. They don't really have any picks. They're gonna, they may not want to be done, but I don't know how they do it, Mike. We've sat here for the last 3 seasons.
Well, I mean.
And talked about how the Celtics have needed a backup wing, and it's just almost impossible to get.
Yeah, but if I'm a contending team and I have a wing that's not starting and I can get a Bobby Portis, I'm making that move. If I'm already good in that position, because
but where does that exist? Where is in a contending team that you can think of says we have expendable wings?
I'm thinking it would be the LA Clippers, where they have Nicholas Batum, they have Morris, and they have the guy they got from Toronto who played for the Blazers too, Norman Powell. I think that Bobby Portis makes more sense for the Clippers than like another wing.
Maybe Morris. They're not going to trade Powell for Port. They can get more than Portis for Powell. Maybe Morris or Batum. I don't. Morris might offer some resistance, but he wasn't a very good defensive player last year, and that has a lot to do with his age now. So they could make that move, but they would. I think as a basketball team, you could argue the Bucks would get worse because they'd be giving up more talent.
Yep,
to just fill a position, and so from that perspective, they're in a tough spot, but they're better off today. There's no doubt about it. They're better off today, and Every sports book has them as the odds-on favorite, which is reasonable, I think. And the Celtics, on the flip side, we talked about how tough it is for the Bucks to cover what the Celtics have offensively. The Celtics, I don't even think are as equipped as they have been in past years to deal with
Not
Giannis.
at all.
So when you start talking about minusing Grant Williams and Marcus Smart, building a wall becomes a little bit tougher. Horford's obviously had some really good success. Rob Williams has caused problems at the rim for Giannis. And the Celtics wings do take on that job of, covering him pretty well. Jaylen Brown has had some decent success, but it's not the same. So, not only did Milwaukee get better offensively, the Celtics kind of got a little worse defensively to match with there too, which is interesting. You could have these two teams playing. We could be seeing scores in the 120s, 130s pretty easily.
Yeah, and I think for Milwaukee, the role of Brook Lopez, which he was dynamic last year and helping that team just be elite defensively. I mean, it's even bigger now. He has to play at the same level on defense again this year for them to be successful and for them to win an NBA championship, because guys like Lillard and Connaughton, they are going to get beat to the basket. Mm-hmm. And I think the philosophy in Milwaukee has always been that a guy like Lopez, and they signed his brother too, they're going all in with this, is we're going to take away the paint. And I think that's a question mark only because he's older too. He played a ton of minutes last year, and they leaned on him a lot. And I think that's why they fortified the center position so they could play him less in the regular season. But I think his role is huge for the success of that team. Is he able to play at that level defensively again? I don't know, Jim.
I don't know.
He was great last year.
He was great. He was really, really good. And I actually thought they were going to lose him. And kudos to the ownership there to ensure that he came back. It's also been one of those things where he hasn't been effective against the Celtics because of the way the Celtics play and the way they spread you out. And in that regard, the Celtics got better, with the addition of Kristaps Porzingis. It's not just a 37-year-old Al Horford who's going to be out there and you hope his legs, don't leave him. You have a 27-year-old.
Well, you also hope Porzingis is healthy too.
Yeah. Well, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I do think both teams, their kryptonite would be health, right?
Yes.
You have issues with Middleton, Lopez, and you worry about a 33-year-old, will be 34, Dame Lillard. And then for the Celtics, it's, Brogdon, Rob Williams, Horford, Porzingis. You worry about, their health. I will say that just on the Celtics side, the top two players, you don't really worry about their health at all.
No. Although unfortunately, the last two postseasons, Tatum was hurt in both of them. Well, Game 7 against Miami and then Golden State, he was obviously not himself.
But it was a fluke injury, turning an ankle that can happen to any guy at any time. These aren't. You don't worry about that as a structural thing for Jason Tatum. That's going to bother him, throughout the season or anything like that.
And to give Stevens credit too, as we plan for Tatum and Brown's longevity for the playoff run, I do think that Stevens did we'll see if it's a good job, but I think he was pretty intentional about building out that position on his roster this year. I can count 3 new guys on the active roster who play the wing position, and with Sam Hauser, it gives Missoula some options to rest these guys. And I know we want to talk about the roster, and obviously that's important, Jim, but I want to hear what you think about Jrue Holiday being available, because I think the option is on the table to have the guy who can cover Damian Lillard on your team now.
Oh yeah.
I know we can fill it in a way with Derek White, but there's a better option out there. And one thing I like about the idea of trading for a guy like this too is we saw moments in the playoffs, especially in the fourth quarter against Atlanta, Philadelphia, and obviously against Miami, where the Celtics fell apart offensively. And part of that is because Jason Tatum didn't do a good job, and he needs to be better. But the other part of it is a guy like Holiday in the fourth quarter would really help the Celtics. And on both ends. And I don't know if there's a better on-ball defender in the NBA. I think Marcus Smart's a better overall defender. But on the ball, I don't know if there's a better one that I can think of right now. Personally, I'd be willing to give up a lot. I think if he's your starting point guard right now, you're winning the NBA championship. I don't think it's a question. But I'd love to hear what you think.
Well, I love Jrue Holiday. He's done it. He's a tough player. I think you're probably right that he might be the best on-ball defender in the league. But before I get to him, I just want, and this has been aggravating me a little bit. People have gotten, since Holiday's name has popped up, people have been pretty dismissive, either directly or indirectly, of how good Derek White is. Derek White, 4 years younger, was all-NBA defensive player. Maybe not the best on-ball defender, but, at the rim, the way he recovers, the things he does for your team are so extraordinarily valuable. He was the Celtics' best guard, and I don't think it was close. And it wasn't like he was playing with chumps. He had Brogdon and Smart, and he was the best out of the three of them. And I thought, he didn't even get the opportunities he deserved last season to even be better than what he showed. He makes big plays, as, seen in Game 6 in Miami, to, have the heads up ability to crash the rim and tip it in and send it to a Game 7. I think he's a really good player. And one of the things, as much as I love Marcus Smart, that I was excited about and am excited about going into the season is that minutes are going to open up for him in ways they haven't before. I still think that's one of Brad Stevens' best moves as a general manager in bringing him in. And I don't know why talking heads in particular around here kind of poo-poo him as Celtics fans overrating him. If anything, I think he's being underrated. I think he's a really solid player. I thought he was their third best player easily last year. And, and we'll see what we get with Porzingis, but he's right there again. And so that said, I don't think you would have to include him in a deal.
I don't think you do either.
Holiday. I think you could make a move. I think what Portland wants is picks.
You
more
have
than anything else. If you send a Malcolm Brogdon, which you would have to include in a deal, they're just going to look to move him to a place like the Clippers anyway to acquire more picks. So I think you would have a 3-team deal if you acquired Jrue Holiday with Malcolm Brogdon going anywhere but Portland.
I think you'd have to thin yourself out at the big, though, to make contracts work. So either Horford or Rob would have
unless you do a 3-team. Unless you do a 3-team and picks are included. I think Sam Hauser would definitely be gone. I think that would be a player, he's not a key piece of the trade, but I think Portland would see him with the young guards as a good piece to add on to what they have.
Pritchard, too.
Pritchard. The bigger obstacle for the Celtics. So you bring Jrue Holiday on. He's making $34 million, and he's got a player option next year. So would this be a move just for this season?
That's
Derek
not my
White's
checkbook.
got 2 more years on his contract. If you resign Holiday, that means you're probably trading Derek White next offseason and saying goodbye to him. Again, for a 34-year-old guard, you're going to pay for multiple years of over $30 million. I don't know if that's good business.
It's good business if they win the championship.
Well, maybe it's just a rental.
Which they haven't been able to do.
Maybe it's just a rental. Maybe it's just for this season. And so I think that's a bigger decision. You have money locked up pretty extensively with 3 guys right now, with Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis. you were not going to spend on both White and Holiday going forward. I think the smarter play is to pay White. He's younger and he's going to be cheaper. And I think he will be better as their contracts go on. So that's where they have to make the decision. If it's me, I'm rolling the dice and I'm going for this 1 year. And I'm trying to win the title. I think you mentioned how motivated he would be if he was in Boston. Could you imagine him playing Milwaukee?
Be awesome.
Yeah.
The other part of it too, and this is the other part I think you do have to consider and think about, is what if he does get moved? And I know that they didn't like Miami's offer for Lillard, but when you think about how much you've struggled against Miami,
sure,
and now you have Holiday and Butler in the backcourt together defensively, and you have
I don't think
Bam
that's a
Adebayo.
team. Yeah, I don't think that's a team you have to worry about acquiring Holiday. I think they're going to want him, but I'd be more concerned about the Sixers swinging a 3-team deal to get Harden to the Clippers, and a bunch of picks going to Portland, and Holiday going to Portland.
Yeah, I guess he doesn't concern me as much on Philly because I feel like Philly will just be Philly.
Yeah,
but Miami's the team that always concerns me.
But a Maxey Holiday backcourt is a lot better than a Harden Maxey backcourt.
It sure is, and they took you to Game 7.
They took you to Game 7. They would be good. Miami doesn't have many picks. I guess they can dangle Tyler Hero. I'm not sure anyone wants fucking Tyler Hero. I think Miami's been better in the playoffs without him. 2 years ago in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Celtics were targeting him with Peyton Pritchard with success. That's how bad he is defensively. So if you're the Clippers, do you really want to roll with Tyler Hero in the playoffs? I think probably not. So I think anyone can really trump what Miami has to offer. And if you look at the Celtics, just off the bat, in terms of draft picks, in 2024, they have 2 firsts and 3 seconds. They have their 2025. They have their 2026. They have their 2027. They have, for a team that's in the position they're in, they got a shit ton of picks.
That's why I think he's coming here. I think it's happening.
If they want to do it, they can. But it has risk because, what you do going forward. But maybe you just do the 1 year, Mike. Maybe that's all it is. And you kind of solve the cash problem for next year a little bit because Brogdon will be off the books. Holiday will leave in free agency. And, you still have a really good core of Porzingis, White, Brown, and Tatum, right?
Yeah, well, that would be up to Holiday because he could always sign his player option.
Well, I think he'd want that would be a bad risk for him, I think. To go into free agency the following year, 35 years old, looking for a long-term deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he could.
Yeah, he could. I mean, and that's the way I look at it, Jim. It's let's get Tatum and Brown over the hump. That's what I look at it, and I think bringing this guy in, and if you're able to keep Derek White, and then you have White and Holiday in the backcourt together, you're talking about that defensive identity coming back, man. Like. That they didn't have last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even with Smart, they didn't have it last year. Something was just off. Something wasn't right. And this is somebody new who hasn't been here. He's not part of this culture. He's bringing something different to the locker room. He's done it. He played at a high level in the NBA Finals. He's fared around the league by other teams. Like you can kind of see it now with the amount of teams that are interested in trading for him. It's because they don't want to fucking play against him. Like the Celtics don't want to play against Jrue Holiday.
He's been an all-star, all-NBA defensive player. Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't think anyone doesn't like Jrue Holiday. I think he's a stand-up guy from, you think anyways. You don't know any of these guys. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would not. And I don't think they have to, but I would absolutely not include Derek White on any deal.
I think a dark horse team to pay attention to is the Golden State Warriors saying we're moving fucking Chris Paul again, and we're giving you our young players and draft picks, and we're going to add Holiday to our squad.
Yeah,
That's
maybe
that could happen.
There's a way then to swing Chris Paul over to
Again for another draft
team, maybe to the Clippers, possibly. I don't know what Golden State Warriors have for draft picks, and see, that's what I think is going to be the deal breaker here. Is I think Portland's going to want picks, or if you don't have picks, you better have a really good young player. And I don't think off the top of my head any of these contending teams really have desirable young players that Portland's going to want. Maybe I'm missing something here, but I don't think so. So it's going to come down to picks, and the Celtics are set up well for that. I don't know what the Golden State Warriors situation is there, though, off the top of my head. I know they used to be flush with them, but I don't know. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. The other really funny thing about this, Mike, is that so here's what Golden State, they have a 2025, so they don't have a 2024, and they have their 2026. But they don't have multiple picks. So
you can't trade for back-to-back years.
Yeah, so again,
the Celtics has to be like a 25 and a 28 or something.
Yeah. So I think the Celtics could include both their 2024s, a bunch of seconds, and I think right there that pretty much trumps up.
Yeah, but if I'm Portland, though, I might poo-poo that and say your 2024s aren't worth shit.
Yeah,
I want like your 20. No, exactly. I would say the Celtics can you give me your 2028 and like your 2030?
Yeah, maybe they
That's what I want.
2024 or 2028 and a pick swap somewhere.
Yeah, like our second rounders. Like I think, and I think that's what Portland did with Milwaukee. They got later on thinking
because Milwaukee doesn't have any picks either. That was part of the reason why.
Yeah, but there's a good chance Giannis won't be there. Milwaukee's going to suck at that point in time too. I think this is like their last run.
I guess you do that, but if I'm Portland, I don't want to wait 5 years to rebuild this either. So I think there's probably a balance there. It's going to happen fast too, Mike. Training camp opens next week. I think Portland's going to want to have this resolved within the next 2 weeks, certainly before we tip off the regular season. So we're going to know he's going to be somewhere soon. And we always talk about these trade iterations of what they're going to look like. They never end up looking like we think, especially when you get really good players, there's usually multiple parts, sometimes multiple teams involved. And I expect that to be what happens here. So as we talk about Golden State or Miami not having picks, I said that. We can't discount another team coming in and helping them out.
Yeah, and for Portland too, and then we can move on to something else. I just want to say too, like they made out great in this trade to get DeAndre Ayton too as part of the deal.
Yeah,
when everybody thought this guy was forcing his way to Miami, when all you were going to get back is like Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson, like some worthless draft picks. No, you got back a first-team all-defensive point guard who you're going to flip for more picks, a center that can kind of restart his career and was the number one pick in the draft. I feel like they hit a grand slam, man.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm kind of obviously I don't want Milwaukee to get better. That's not helpful to the Celtics. But that whole thing was pissing me off. And just like the Holland Philly thing, like Dame Lillard, I've been a good, soldier here in Portland. You got to trade me where I want. No, you were a good soldier and you got paid $55 million. If you want to be traded, the team's got to get the best deal possible for themselves. And this idea that, the cockiness and arrogance of the Miami Heat and Pat Riley that, we don't even have to include Caleb Martin in the deal to bring hope of Dame Lillard because Dame wants to come here. It's like, screw you guys. I'm so
fucking blew
glad
up in
this
its
didn't
face.
happen. Yeah, I really am. Screw them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like as much as they probably hate each other, Pat Riley and Danny Ainge have similarities as GMs where
Sure.
Here's the trade. That's it, folks. I'm not picking up the phone again. Like, here's the offer. I'm not talking to you. And it sounds like that's how it went down with this Lillard trade. It was whatever Riley offered, and I have no idea what it actually was. And then that's it. Like, I'm so cocky and arrogant. Like, I'm the smartest guy in the fucking NBA. I'm Pat fucking Riley. I have heat culture. I don't have to listen to anybody. And, sometimes that blows up in your face. You can get in your own way. I feel like Pat Riley got in his own way. I think at the end we saw that with Danny, and obviously Danny Ainge is doing great again in Utah. Like,
but it's not, like,
yeah,
I think Danny gets a lot of crap for that. But at the same time, aren't you glad he didn't trade the Tatum and Brown picks? I mean, it's a much different situation to not trade Tatum and Brown picks that were going to be top 3 than
and his other draft picks worked out. Yeah.
Like it's like I don't know. I feel like Danny would have figured out a way to make this work if that was all he had on his roster and they just came this close. And the reality is, with what they're bringing back, they will not get to where they were last year.
I know.
They lost.
Well, we say that, right? We say that about Miami, and then Tyler Halliburton will turn into a better version of Max Strus. Like, who knows with that fucking franchise? Really, Jim? Like, I'm not counting them out ever again. I do this every year. I count out Miami, even when they're 500 going into the playoffs. I'm not counting them out until they're dead.
Yeah,
I refuse. I feel like if he's good at one thing, that GM down there, if Riley's good at one thing, he found the replacements for the guy, Vincent and the wing Strus. He probably has him on his roster already.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I think that's a hell of a dice to roll. Mike, season's about to open up. What are you most excited on the roster and all that stuff? We can spend the last 2 minutes talking about that, unless you got something else on your mind.
No, I'm excited about the roster. I like the amount of shooting that they have, even though I want them to shoot less threes, and I don't like Missoula ball. But Sam Hauser better be ready to go, baby, because he's got some competition at that wing position. I'll tell you that. So camp battles will be interesting. I really like Brissett. I don't know much about him other than when I watched him play against the Celtics. It was like Michael Jordan out there. So, obviously we're not going to get that, but he seems like a decent player that's going to fill a big void with Grant Williams being gone. I'm excited to see Kristaps Porzingis and Brown and Tatum play together and what that looks like. And I think what the Celtics haven't had in years past is end of the bench ever. And, you and I always come to the conclusion, well, it really doesn't matter. But this year they do. They have depth. They have 15 guys. They have real NBA players throughout the active roster. Maybe other than Jordan Walsh, which we don't know yet. We'll know once the season starts what he is. But really, they got guys who've played. And, even Lamar Stevens has started games for the Cavs last year. I think their biggest that kid Banton probably hasn't really seen NBA time, but for the most part, they have a real 15, they're close to 15 guys that can all get playing time. And, Luke Cornett will play a lot during the regular season. I enjoy watching him. So I'm excited for this team. I think guys are going to be able to rest this year, and that's important. I feel like last year it was only the bigs that got rest, and this year you'll be able to see Tatum and Brown take nights off, and they'll still be able to win because they have real NBA players backing them up.
Yeah, they definitely loaded up on wings. I think Jordan Walsh's ticket to Maine got punched when Lamar Stevens got signed. I think they're a bit redundant, those two guys, in a way that Steve Matuek and Sam Hauser are a little bit too, and that'd be an interesting battle. So they definitely have guys and more depth, particularly at the wing. The thing that is going to be most interesting to me, and I think it's gotten more interesting now, is just the Malcolm Brogdon situation. From all
Well, he's
accounts,
healthy.
it sounds like he's healthy, but from all accounts, it did sound like he was pissed off. And now you have this Jrue Holiday trade rumors popping up again. So what's his mindset going into camp? Is this going to be a guy they need to move, even if the Holiday thing does not work out? I think if his head is right, he's a big piece of what they want to do. And, we saw up until, midway through that Miami series, just how dangerous he can be offensively for the Celtics, particularly with his shooting. So that's the most interesting thing to me going into the season, and the piece that I'm just most unsure of. I mean, he hasn't been a Celtic long. We don't have a great history to fall back on and say, oh, Brogdon will be okay. There has been reports with previous teams that he's been cranky at times. And, his ego gets bruised easily. So I think that's interesting. And then the other thing to me, the second, is how they're going to play. I think we know offensively they're going to continue to shoot a lot of threes, but defensively, they aren't switchable anymore as like they used to be. And that's something I loved, but it doesn't mean they still can't be good defensively. They have incredible length. They have really good athletes. I think we could see some zone. I think we could see hedging the screen more. I think we could see the Celtics just length causing teams fits and problems. So defensively, in the preseason, that's what I'm going to be looking out for, is how they are going to play and what their identity is going to be and scheme is going to be, because I can't imagine it's going to look like what we've been accustomed to with Brad Stevens, and then with Ime on, kind of steroids when he came in here, and the switch and scheme that they had. So
Yeah.
That's really interesting to me, how they're going to play, and how effective it's going to be, and how long it's going to take to be effective. You don't just implement a new scheme and it immediately works. That never happens. So as Celtics fans, we might need to be patient for 35 games for this thing to be implemented and work correctly. And that's always a fun roller coaster, because as fans, we want immediate gratification, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it'll probably be a good thing if they come out a little sloppy, because last year they came out as like NBA Jam. He's on fire. And,
but with no defense.
We were all like, oh, they're going to break every record in the book. And we were like way off. So, Jim, just to end the pod, I got a question for you. A prediction for next year. How many games does it take for Kyrie Irving to say he wants to be traded out of Dallas?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. I'm done making predictions about Kyrie. Yeah.
When does he take his vacation? Is it after 20 games?
Here's the only prediction I'll make on that guy, is that it will end bad. I don't know when exactly it will end, but when it ends, it is going to be a fucking train wreck of epic proportions. And that's the only guarantee you have with Kyrie. Everyone's going to go down in flames when he's around. And so it's just a matter of when that is going to happen. Mm. So if you're a Dallas Mavericks fan and you listen to this, strap in, put your seatbelt on, and make sure you have airbags, because it's going to be one hell of a crash when it finally does crash.
Well, they already saw it last year. They traded for him and then they just sucked. So,
that wasn't as much his fault, I didn't think. I know we love to blame Kyrie. They sucked before him, and there was a lot of problems. And Luka, I thought, was in really poor shape. I thought he gave middle and effort a lot of times. I think a lot of Dallas's issues, and people don't like to admit this, last year were on him. We're on Luka Doncic.
All right, Jim.
All right. We'll talk soon. We will be back sooner, Mike. Let's try to do this again in a week. Celtics will open up training camp. We'll hear from Malcolm Brogdon, and we'll hear from the Celtics. So we'll get a pulse anyways. And then we got a game next Sunday. We got action, Mike. We've spent so much time talking about offseason moves and Jrue Holiday and Dame Lillard. We have actual basketball in about 9 days.
Yeah, we do. And I have a feeling we'll be doing a pod sooner than a week because the Celtics will be landing Holiday sooner than that. So we'll talk to you soon, folks.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.